Hi everyone and welcome to Murphy's Law Garage. Today we take Seth's F150 and turn it into race truck. Stick around.
Dang it.
Alright, so this is eye candy. Ooh. Ooh. So what we have here, Seth, Viking adjustable shocks. It's the rear. Viking coilover kit for the front. Spring setup for the truck. And this is what, VAS 3.5 lowering? This is a VAS 3.5 lowering kit that requires an axle flip. So what do you think? We're going to find some of them 1/260 foots in this truck? I think so. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. We've already got the truck jacked up, but we don't have a lift. We're doing this on the ground, and it always makes things more interesting. So let's get into this, get the wheels off, and get that axle and leaf spring dislocated, and get this kit put in. Be right back. All right, I'm going to apologize ahead of time because the wind is going to make a lot of noise here, but I've looked at the instructions from VIS how to do the flip kit, and they're not amazing, but they're also just enough. So we'll leave it at that. I'm sorry, VIS, y'all. Instruction writing guy needs to put a few more words in that document. But the first thing after looking at this that I decided I want to do is we're going to pull the shocks off. We got a bolt up here. We got a bolt down there. That's probably the easiest part of this. We're also going to pull the bump stop off because that's going to get in the way of the lower. And then something I need to do that's unique to the truck because we have the dual exhaust system on it is I need to unbolt the tail shaft section of it and get this out of the way so that it doesn't fight us with the leaf spring. Seth is working on over there. He's working on putting a strap in under the axle, going up to the frame, like kind of like this, down to the axle, because we don't want to fight the axle during this process. We don't have to disconnect any of the lines or anything like that. So we can basically support the axle to the frame of the truck while we're doing this. I'll bring you back once I've got these shocks off. Again, just a pair of bolts. I'll have the stoppers off, I'll have the tailpipes off, and we'll have the axle floating on, not floating, but at least attached to the frame using the straps. And then we're going to start working on getting all of this unbolted so that we can perform the leaf spring flip. That's a pretty man right there. Oh my God. All right. So y'all can see shocks are out, bump stops are out. We've got the tailpipe section of our twin exhaust removed. Much more difficult than we thought it'd be. I guess it kind of swole in there. You can see we've also got one, two straps holding the rear axle. They're actually under a little bit of tension right now. You can almost play a banjo on them. Not super tight, but that's because the leaf spring's pushing down on it a bit. It's kind of just tighter than neutral, and that gives us a good position to be in to loosen these U-bolts and not have it move around on us. Next thing we're going to do after that, well, we're not going to pull the U-bolts off. We're going to go ahead, and there's a pair of 10mm bolts back here. One right there. Same on the other side that hold the brake line and ABS accessories and stuff. So we're going to loosen that up off so that it's not being pulled on by these blocks whenever we remove them. And then we're going to go ahead and drop the U-bolts. We'll bring you back for that. All right, y'all. So U-bolts are out. You can see U-bolts and the lower retainer and the bolts are all out. The straps are still here, and they're keeping the axle from rotating left or right. We've got the jack under it right now, but it's only to keep the axle from rotating forward. We're in such a position now where we can use that jack to change the angle of the rear end if necessary. The jack doesn't need to be there. So we're going to move forward with the next part of the setup for this, which is going to be unbolting the leaf springs off each side. Now, That side, you can just unbolt both sides, no big deal, and pull a leaf spring out. This side, you can just unbolt this one and get it out. But this guy right here, because in the infinite wisdom of Ford, the bolt is turned with the head facing the fuel tank. You have one of two options: either drop the fuel tank to slip the bolt out and reuse it, or loosen this and cut the bolt from the backside until the head, rotate the bolt and keep cutting at it with a cutting wheel until the head of the bolt comes off. And then our kit actually includes a new bolt to stick back in that hole because of that. And obviously you turn the bolt the right way around when it goes in, so no one has to deal with that stupidity again. So Seth and I were talking. There's a 40-minute long video of someone doing this in a shop on a lift. We want you to see what it looks like doing it on the ground, because most of you are going to do this on the ground. But also, I know if I have to explain to you how to take these bolts off or cut the head off of that, you probably shouldn't be doing this yourself. So if you're already at this point and asking questions about what to do and you're uncomfortable, just stop. Let someone else do it. Suspension work in your driveway isn't worth your life. This is really important stuff, and we know what we're doing. So we're going to go ahead and get these leaf springs dislocated from the truck, and then we'll show you what to do next with rotating all of this assembly around and putting the new pieces on. All right, y'all. So as you can see, leaf spring is out on that side. No big deal. It just unbolts. For this one, like I said, you have to cut it off, right? So you're going to see it stuck through like this, and the head's on the other side. Let me show you what it looks like. So if you take a grinder with a cutting wheel, you back this bolt out to where you can slip the cutting wheel in here. I kind of rode the cutting wheel on the back of the head of the bolt here, and as I gently applied pressure, the bolt slowly spun like this, and it just cut all the way around until it left this little nipple of metal in the middle. And I couldn't reach any further. I probably could have put a new blade on and got a little further in. But what we did was to run the nut back on and act like we were tightening it up, and tightened it until it started to compress the ears on the leaf spring mount, and it went off like a bomb. Like, it got up to about 100. Like, it is surprising how strong that tiny little piece of tempered metal is, because we reefed on it to about 100 foot-pounds. It was like, bow, and it exploded and broke off. So now we're just going to go put this in the vise and get our nut back, and then we'll have a new bolt to put back in that location. And like I said, this is loose, so I'm going to go ahead and get this leaf spring out of the truck as well, and then we're going to get the new hardware settled on it and get it underneath. All right, so you see the leaf springs here are out of the truck. The next thing we need to do is take the locating bolts and flip them around so that the head of the locating pin is facing out the top. We also need to get rid of any blocks that your setup may have. Now, depending on whether you have a 4x4, that sort of thing, you might have different setup here for blocks. We've just got this little skinny one. So I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to flip the bolts around and put them back in again. All right, and there it is. No plate up top, pins on this side of the leaf spring pack now. We left this washer plate that they had right here, and then put the bolts back in. Got them lubed up because they were a little surface rusty. I can tell you that from what the instructions show to this truck is a nicer truck with a tow package and all of that stuff. We're commenting that they probably used a two-door tradesman rear-wheel drive truck without any sort of tow package, so it doesn't have this extra block on it. So the bolts are longer. So we'll take a look at this after. We might need to trim these bolts down so they don't poke out the bottom of the truck too much. But we're going to do the other side, and then we're going to slip these leaf springs back in. Wow, look at how high that axle sits now. It's like the center of the axle is even with the body of the bed line. Okay, so look. Back's bolted in, front's bolted back in. We've got the axle perch support, whatever. It slips inside of the what used to be the bottom of the old perch. And it's got a pair of holes in it that are drilled offset that connect into the pins that come through the axle. Use the holes forward of the truck. So if you're looking at the bracket like this, the two holes need to be closer to the front of the bracket. And you'll notice on the back of the bracket, on this side of the bracket, there's a hole drilled into the back of it. where this bolt can go back through here and not run into that that support. So the offset holes go towards the front, which means you'll have extra metal in the back, leaving a space. The instructions are kind of vague in that respect. Anyways, so we've got the axle sitting here all by itself. That jack's doing nothing. It's just sitting here on the supports. And go ahead and get the upper bracket on, get the lower bracket on, and get the U-bolts tightened up, and then the axle will be in, and then we'll get the shocks in. I'll bring you back at some point during that. Oh, note to self, we've got the, what is this, the MBRP Street? Yeah. It's got the MBRP Street dual exhaust setup on it. We are concerned about how close these pipes are getting now to the axle. We're going to have to slip the pipes on and probably sit the truck down and see just how close these two want to get. There's a good chance this wiring harness right here, I'm going to need to undo it and flip it around and connect it on the bottom to get more clearance to this pipe. We're also not opposed if this is for sure too close and going to try to strike. You know, I have a hacksaw and I know where there's turn downs, so we'll see how that goes. All right, you see Seth under there tightening these bolts. They have to be tightened in an X pattern to 30 foot-pounds, 60 foot-pounds, 90 foot-pounds, and then 110 foot-pounds. All I'm saying is you better have eaten your Wheaties before you start this and have an extra person to do some of the tightening, because, woo, my arms are ripped right now. Anyways, Seth finally got a click out of one of them over there. Now that we've got the axle U-bolted back in, we're going to go ahead and we've got the axle lifted right now, so it's as if it's on its tires. We're going to go ahead and relocate this harness and then see what the exhaust looks like on it and then set it down. We'll show you what it looks like. Public service announcement. So you see this right here? This can't go past that. And if you flip this bolt around, you can't put the nut because it hits this nut and the U-bolt. So, before you put the lower U-bolt plate on and the bolts and everything else, put your shocks on. And I highly recommend these beautiful Viking shocks if you're, you know, looking for something. Anyways, put the shocks on and then slip this plate on, because then you might just have to undo all of this to put this in. I don't know who anyone who's dumb enough to have done that just now, but, you know, say a prayer for the guys, because there might have been a few curse words and spilt beers. Anyways, we're going to get the exhaust on and then the tires. All right, so once you've got your suspension, exhaust, so we've got the exhaust, everything, we're ready now to put our tires back on. So we're going to go ahead and, hey, Seth, not the, no, put those back. All right, woo. Low rider sits a little higher. It's so low. The MBRP exhaust we have is touching the axle in the back right now. That is insanely low. Like, and we don't have the add a leaf spring like VAS recommends, which gives you another inch. But I think even with that extra inch, the exhaust is still going to be right there from touching that rear axle. We're going to try to adjust the exhaust because a bunch of clamps we can loosen up and wiggle around. I've got a good feeling that it may not make it, and the exhaust might have to become race car, like turn sideways out the sides or turn down right before the axle's an axle dump. I don't know. We'll see. But before we go determining whether or not we can fix this, we need to level the truck out. So let's get the front end up, get the coilovers on, sit it back down again, and figure out if we can straighten that out without cutting the exhaust off. All right, so here's the front picked up. We've actually already done the other side if it looks a little dark right now. We did that just so we could figure everything out. It takes longer to assemble the Viking coilover than it does to actually do this part of it. But the long and the short is I'm going to pull this ball joint off. Sway bar, you see I have it disconnected here. It's because it was fighting us to reconnect the other side. I'm going to take the ABS bracket right here that's got the brake hose off, this one off. And then I'm going to take this one loose. And then there's 1 And then right up here, 2 clips you need to pop away. So this is all very loose, because whenever you take the ball joint out here, this is going to fold forward and down a good bit. And you need a good bit of slack there so that you don't pinch or hurt anything here. And then it's 1, 2 bolts that hold the bottom, and then 1, 2, 3 bolts that hold the very top of this top hat. It's nothing crazy at all. I'll show you the ball joint, which might be the trickiest part for some people. But realistically, once you get this nut backed off, don't come all the way off. Stop a few threads shy of coming off, and you're going to hit this with a hammer, and it'll pop. And then really everything else is just unbolting and taking it apart. All right, so you can see here, once you've got this all unbolted, you can see I've got it all unbolted, the clip's undone. There's no stress on this. You can see here that once the ball joint is popped, and this one popped on its own. Whenever I loosened it, literally just rubbed against it and it popped down. But that's why you need to stop a few threads short, because if you completely take this nut off and it pops off like that, it could actually damage the threads on the ball joint. So don't take this all the way off until this ball joint pops. If it doesn't want to pop, take a hammer, and you see this casting mark right here, that's intentional. You're going to strike it right here. Really good solid strikes with a heavy hammer, and the resonance of the strike is going to cause it to pop loose. And then once you've got that, you gently lay this away. To get it out, you might need to pry down here on the upper control arm. Use a pry bar right here, pry down so you can get the nut off, and then gently let it lay out and make sure you're not hurting this. So next, all I got to do is, I've got 1 nut left holding the top in. I've got a couple of nuts left holding this in, and I'm just going to push down on the lower control arm, pop this out, and pop the Viking shock in. I'll show you that in just a second. All right, so lower strut mount, upper strut mount is in here. Basically just has earlobes that catch these bolts, and I've got the Viking shock installed with anti-seize on the threads. Now all I'm going to do is tighten up the upper and lower bolts, and then the lower mount, and then ball joint, sway bar, all of the things back together again. And that's it. Then we can sit the truck on the ground. These have been matched to being just enough to touch the bottom of the coil. We're going to sit the truck down and get an idea of where it is and whether or not we like the height. And if it's all good, we'll lock it down with the spanners. Bring you back. All right, and that's it back together again. Viking shock, upper ball joint, everything's all back together the way that it was. We're going to put the wheels back on, sit it on the ground, and make sure it's level just the way we want. We do that by adjusting these locking nuts here to compress the spring and lower it. So in case y'all are curious, nope, the over the axle exhaust did not make it. We're gonna put some turn downs right here and sweep towards the side of the truck. As you can see, we can't. It's really dark. It's getting early this time of year, dark early this time of year, but got the truck set up. You can see that it's sitting lower in the rear than it is in the front. We've got the front where we want it to be. The rear is just too low. And realistically, Seth still needs to tow a trailer with his boat back here. We can't go this far. So we're going to get the add-a-leaf kit for it, along with a track bar that's going to be in a future video, so we can pick the rear up another inch, and that'll level it out with where we've got it in the front with a little bit of preload, and that'll be a way better situation. But for now, it's going to work fantastic for our trip to the track and all that fun stuff. Anyways, that's it. We're exhausted. I mean, I'm done. It's 2 days of this all day long, first thing in the morning. We're going to get cleaned up. It's probably going to take an hour to pick all this crap up we've got laying everywhere. And we'll see you next at the track, more than likely, running these vehicles down it. So, as usual, we love you. God bless. Peace.